Look at your refrigerator in the light. Those streaks are not dirt. They are not dirt. Nobody can clean stainless steel appliances without leaving something behind, and those streaks are the something. Your own water and your own cloth dried in place. You have not failed to lift a mark off that panel. You added one, which is why wiping harder makes it worse. There are 3 different things sitting on that door, and they arrived 3 different ways. The prints crowded around the handle are oil off a hand. The dull film down the side that faces the cooker is airborne grease landing there for a year until it went hard. And the long pale streaks through the middle are the ones you made yourself every time you wet it and walked away. I ran a housekeeping floor for 30 years. Steel was never a project on my sheet. It was 6 minutes for a whole kitchen of it on a clock, and somebody came behind me afterwards and laid a torch flat against the door to look down the surface instead of at it. We were not faster than you are. We just never put anything on that steel that had to dry. Here is what almost everybody does, and every part of it is reasonable. You spray the whole door. You take one cloth and go over it, and because the marks are round, you wipe in circles at the worst of them. Then you stand back and it looks worse than when you started, so you spray it again, and now there is a haze on it that was not there this morning. Every step of that is putting water onto a surface and walking away from it. The second you spray a whole door, the top starts drying while your hand is still down at the bottom. And whatever was carried in that water, and there is always something carried in it, gets left standing on the steel as the water goes. That is your streak. It is a deposit, and the more you spray, the more of it there is. Which means the first thing that has to change is not the cleaner. It is the size of what you work on. Arm's length, about 2 feet of panel and no more. You clean it and you dry it before you move sideways, and you never leave anything sitting on that steel long enough to dry on its own. Do only that and half your streaks are gone before we have said one word about a product. And before we finish, I am going to open the caddy and tell you the 2 bottles a trained housekeeper actually carries for steel. Neither of them is a stainless steel cleaner. One of them costs about $4, and there is a fair chance it is in your bathroom cupboard tonight. But nothing touches that door yet, because 2 completely different materials are being sold to you as stainless steel, and on one of them the wrong move is permanent. Go up close and look for the grain. Real brushed steel has fine lines in it, all running the same way like the grain in a plank of wood, and once you have seen them, you cannot stop seeing them. Now put 1 drop of water on the panel and watch what it does. On bare steel it spreads and goes flat. On the other kind it sits up in a bead, the way rain sits on a wax surface, because there is a coating over the metal and the water never reaches it. If it beads, if you cannot find a grain anywhere, if the finish looks slightly soft and warm rather than bright and hard, you have a coated panel. Fingerprint resistant, black stainless, slate. Whatever the showroom called it, it is a thin skin laid over the top of the steel. That matters because nearly everything people are told to reach for on steel takes that skin off. Vinegar takes it off. A cream cleanser takes it off. Anything with a bite to it lifts it away in patches, and it does not grow back, and you cannot polish it back, because underneath it there is only plain gray metal that no longer matches the door standing next to it. So the whole of this splits right here. If your drop of water beaded, your method is warm water, a few drops of dish soap, 1 damp cloth, 1 dry cloth, and nothing else ever for the life of that appliance. That is not me being careful with you. That is the entire method. Skip the vinegar, skip the cream cleanser, and be glad, because yours is the easy one and it will look right for years. Everybody else, grain visible and no bead, come with me. You have got the forgiving surface and you have got more tools. 3 marks, 3 answers, and this is where most cleaning falls apart, because most people only own 1 weapon. The prints around the handle are grease. A hand is oily, that is all a fingerprint is, and grease comes off with something that takes hold of grease. A few drops of dish soap in a bottle of water does exactly that and costs you nothing. The film down the side of the fridge that faces the cooker is grease as well, but it is not the same job. That arrived as a fine mist every time somebody fried anything, and then it sat there warming gently against the side of a working appliance, and it has gone from an oil to something much closer to a varnish. Soap will move it, but only if you give it warmth and a minute of patience. Warm water in the bottle, not cold. Wet that side, leave it standing while you do the front of the dishwasher, then come back to it. It comes off in 1 pass instead of 5. And the chalky rings near an ice dispenser or the splash line on a panel beside a sink are not grease at all. There is no grease in them. That is what your water was carrying, left sitting there when the water went. Soap has nothing to grab hold of. You can wash that spot 40 times and it will not move, and that is the point where most people quietly decide the appliance is ruined. It is not ruined. It needs the opposite thing, something mildly sour. Plain white vinegar on a cloth, laid over the spot for a minute, then rinsed and dried. Bare steel only. You already know why. So here is the order, and the order is the professional part. Anybody can wipe. Almost nobody wipes in the right sequence. Handle first and with its own cloth. The handle is not part of the door. The handle is where every hand in the house actually lands, and on its own it carries more oil than the entire rest of the panel put together. If you do the door first and the handle afterwards, you have cleaned a door. If you do the handle first with the same cloth and then take that cloth onto the door, you have just spread the handle across the whole appliance, and that is precisely what the greasy halo around it is made of. Handle first its own cloth and get up underneath the lip of it where your fingers actually curl, because that is the part nobody has ever cleaned in the history of that kitchen, and it is the first place a trained eye goes. Then find the grain and stay on it, up and down on some appliances, side to side on others, and it genuinely changes from one machine to the next in the same kitchen. Wipe along it and you sweep those lines out. Wipe across it and you push dirt down into them and drag a streak over the top. Circles do both at the same time, which is why circles are the worst thing you can do to a steel door. Then work top down in sections. Mist it, do not spray it. Turn the nozzle until it gives you the finest cloud it has in it and put the lightest coat on that steel that will still wet it. If you can see a drop run, you have used 4 times too much, and every one of those runs is a mark already forming. Damp cloth along the grain, wrung out until it will not drip. Then before you move sideways, second cloth dry along the grain and buff that section until it stops looking wet. That is not a flourish at the end. That is the step that decides whether there is a streak, because a streak is only ever water that was allowed to dry on its own, and a section buffed dry never got the chance. Which brings me to the thing nobody tells you, and the reason a completely correct method still fails in a real kitchen. Your cloth is a consumable, and yours is probably dead. A microfiber cloth works because each fiber is split into thousands of tiny hooks that physically drag oil and dust off a surface and hold on to them. 2 things kill that, and they kill it permanently. Fabric softener is the first, and it is the common one because softener is designed to lay a thin coating over fiber so it feels kind against skin, and the moment it coats a microfiber cloth, every one of those hooks is filled in. The cloth still feels lovely. It smells clean. It smears. The second is washing them in with a cotton load because cotton sheds lint and microfiber grabs lint, and now you're laying fluff onto the one surface in your house where you are trying to make everything invisible. So they go through the machine on their own. Hot, a little detergent, no softener ever, and no dryer sheet either for the same reason. And keep them apart by job. Every hotel on earth color codes its cloths, and the reason is not tidiness. It is that a cloth which has been round a bathroom must never arrive at a fridge door. 2 colors is plenty at home. 1 set for kitchen steel and glass, 1 set for everything else, and if you cannot tell them apart, then buy the cheap ones in 2 colors and stop having to think about it. If your steel has been streaking no matter what you do, run the whole method once with a cloth straight out of the packet, washed once on its own first. A good half of you are going to find that was the entire problem. And before I open that caddy, go and put 1 drop of water on your fridge door and tell me in the comments whether it beaded or spread and which way your grain ran. It surprises people how often the fridge and the dishwasher standing right next to each other run opposite ways. I read them. Now the caddy, as promised. 2 bottles for steel, and neither one is a stainless steel cleaner. The first is the one you have already met. Water with a few drops of dish soap in it. That is the grease bottle. It does the handles and it does the greasy side by the cooker, and it costs almost nothing, which is exactly as it should be. The second bottle is the one that changes what a kitchen looks like, and I have never once heard it mentioned outside the trade. It is alcohol. Rubbing alcohol, 70%, the flat bottle from the drugstore for a couple of dollars, decanted into a plain mist bottle. That is the whole of it. Here is why it works when nothing in that aisle does. Every single problem we have talked about comes from something being left behind on the steel when the liquid goes. Minerals out of the water. A trace of soap, the oil out of a polish. Alcohol at 70% lifts hand oil straight off the surface, and then it is gone in about 5 seconds on its own without a cloth, without a rinse. There is nothing in it left to dry into a mark. You missed a section, you take 1 pass along the grain with a dry cloth, and that section is finished. No rinse, no second bottle, no race against a drying panel because there is no water in it to beat. That is the whole difference between a corridor of steel doors that look identical at 9 in the morning and at 9 at night, and a home kitchen that looks right for one afternoon. 2 rules on it. It is for bare steel only, so if your panel beaded that drop of water, this one is not for you, and soap and water genuinely is enough for what you own, and it does not shift a grease film. It is a finisher, not a degreaser. Soap first if there is a film on it, alcohol last always. And one honest sentence about that aisle, because you have stood in it. Most of the sprays that promise to end your fingerprint problem are built on oil, and oil is sticky. It holds the next fingerprint better than bare metal ever could. The shine sells you the bottle and the stickiness sells you the next one. You are not imagining that the prints come back faster afterwards. They do. I want to say why this is a standard and not a preference, because it is the part that separates what I do from a cleaning video. On an inspected floor, you are not judged on whether a room looks clean. You are judged on 4 places, and it is always the same 4, and not one of them is the middle of a door, the lip underneath the handle, the seam where the door seal meets the frame, the bottom 2 inches just above the kick plate where a mop has been going past for years, and the top edge, which nobody under 6 feet tall has ever laid eyes on, and which is furred with grease and dust on very nearly every appliance in every house I have ever walked into. Do those 4 and the appliance reads as clean from anywhere in that room, even if you never touched the middle of it at all. Do the middle only, which is what everybody does, and something will look wrong and you will not be able to say what. That is what 30 years actually buys you, not a secret product, a short list of the places that decide it. Now the permanent things, quickly, because on steel the wrong move does not wash out. Steel wool never, the green scouring pads never. They cut the finish, and every stroke you made stays visible under a raking light for the rest of that appliance's life. Bleach never on any of it, coated or bare. It discolors the steel and there is no road back from it. Rust spots, yes, you can get rust on stainless, and no, it is usually not your steel rusting. It is almost always a speck of ordinary iron that landed there and rusted where it sat, a scouring pad, a wet tin left standing on the door. On bare steel, a mild cream cleanser on a soft sponge lifts it, worked along the grain, and warm the sponge under the tap first because it goes gentler when it is warm. In fine scratches, if your panel is bare brushed steel, grain visible, no bead, light scratches can be blended along the grain with a fine non-scratch pad, work the full length of the panel rather than at the scratch itself, so it feathers out instead of leaving you a bright patch. Slowly dry and always start low on the side where nobody looks. If it is coated or if it is a mirror finish, do not start. There is nothing you can do to a coated panel with a pad except take the coating off it. And then the part that keeps all of this done, which is honestly the only part I care about. The full pass I have described takes about 6 minutes for a whole kitchen of steel, and you do it once a week. That is the smaller half of the job. The other half takes 90 seconds, and it is not the doors at all. It is the handles. Once a day, whenever you happen to be standing there anyway, 1 cloth, 1 pass along each handle and up under the lip of it. That is where the oil arrives. That is where the halo starts. And that is the whole reason a kitchen goes from clean to greasy in 4 days. 90 seconds a day, and the weekly pass stops being a job and turns back into a wipe. If you do nothing else out of all of this, do the handles. So here is the whole of it, small enough to hold in one hand. 1 drop of water first, and a bead means coated, and coated means soap and water forever. Handle first, its own cloth up under the lip. Find the grain and never leave it. Mist, never soak 2 feet at a time. Damp cloth along the grain, dry cloth behind it before you move sideways. Vinegar for the chalky marks, bare steel only. Alcohol last for the finish, bare steel only. Cloths washed on their own, no softener. Handles daily, everything weekly. Go and put a light on that fridge door tonight and look down the surface of it instead of at it. Whatever is on there, you put on there. And every single thing you put on there, you can stop putting on there, starting with the next time you touch it.